So welcome everyone. Thank you for joining The Power of Walking, part of the Live Better Longer series from the American Federation for Aging Research, Prevention Magazine, and the Resource Centers for Minority Aging Research. I am Sarah Smith, the editor-in-chief of Prevention, the health and wellness magazine and site where we are huge fans of walking. So I'm very excited to dig into the subject today, why walking is so good for us and how to get the most out of every step. In our Live Better Longer webinar series, we are having fascinating conversations with leading experts so that we can share not just the latest research around health and aging with you, but really understand how to apply it to our lives. AFAR is a leader in supporting aging research, really making sure this area of research, which affects all of us, gets the attention it deserves. And Prevention has a long history of bringing advice and ideas to people across the country. And we, in fact, are hosting a virtual walk this coming Saturday, which is free to join, and I'll share more about that in a little bit. But we're also grateful to the Resource Centers for Minority Aging Research and their work supporting scientists from underrepresented groups. So today, I am thrilled to be talking to Catherine Sarkisian of UCLA, who has studied the power of walking as we age, and who I know we are going to learn a lot from today. Welcome, Catherine.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Appreciate the opportunity.
Great. So why don't we get started by talking about your interest in walking? How did you come to this area of study? Are you a walker?
It's a great question. So I actually have been a lifelong exerciser. I'm actually a runner. And I've always held the belief that medicine is not just, it's not about going to the doctor and taking pills and going to the hospital and getting interventions. Health is about wellness and taking good care of yourself. So I've had the great fortune to have good health and enjoy running, but I also really love walking. I think I told you previously, I'm actually getting over a knee injury. And so I've been doing, my ratio of walking to running has really gone up. And I feel like I just love the feeling of walking and exercising. I'm also a clinical geriatrician. So most of my patients that I see are actually in their 60s, 70s, 80s, and even 90s. And so not everyone can walk, but it's such an accessible form of exercise that I've always been a big proponent of walking with my patients.
Oh, that's really great to hear that you're giving that advice to people, across the spectrum. I know I want to delve into your research and what you study, but can we talk a little bit about actually what do we mean by walking? I mean, obviously we all know how to walk, but I mean, are we talking a stroll to the store? Are we talking power walks? What kind of walking are you talking about?
Great point. So I understand that the people on this webinar are a very diverse group, right? So some of the people listening in today maybe are very sedentary and haven't had any exercise in months. Other people are probably already going to the gym for an hour a day. So the advice I give to people really varies. So we know from a huge body of epidemiologic, very well conducted studies over the last 2 decades that being sedentary, doing no physical activity is very dangerous for your health. It's, on par to smoking. So for those of you who are out there who are doing no physical activity, great for you for joining this webinar. And the absolute best thing you can do is to go from 0 to some walking. And to answer your question, Sarah, absolutely. So that's been kind of a big debate in the physical activity lecture. Do steps count? If you park your car a little farther from the grocery store and you walk a little farther, does that count as physical activity? And I think there's pretty strong consensus that absolutely that counts as physical activity, especially if you're one of the people going from 0 to some physical activity. So absolutely. And then as we can talk more about how many steps per day. So there are different levels. So the absolute most important thing you could do is to go from 0, ideally, to 4,000 steps a week is a good goal. Even better, we know there's about a 50% mortality benefit from observational data if you go from 0 to 4,000. Or I should say, comparing people who are 4,000 to people who are less than 2,000. And once you get up to comparing 7,000 to people who are 4,000 or below, the benefit might be as much as 50 to 75% reduction in mortality. So that would be for people, 7,000 steps a week. That's about an hour a day for most people going on a typical pace. So that may not be accessible to everybody. For those of you who want to really get a big mortality benefit, I would suggest aiming for 4,000 steps a day. But if you can go up to 7,000, you probably get more of a benefit. But the good thing is that we've seen, for a long time, everybody was saying 10,000 steps, 10,000 steps. Probably get most of the mortality benefit at 7,000 steps. So about an hour a day.
That's so interesting because we do hear the 10,000 all the time. I love that the benefit is actually slightly less, because 10,000 can be a lot in a day, I've found. I feel like I walk a lot. I live in a city, but 10,000 can be tough.
Yeah, New Yorkers are a million times better than we Los Angelinos who use our car to go everywhere. But yeah, it's a lot of steps.
Yeah. What about where you're walking? What if you're on a treadmill, or does it matter if you're, again, walking just to the car a lot of times, or does it need to be a sustained effort?
Yeah. So great question. I know you have a lot of really sophisticated participants in this webinar who know that the gold standard of evidence is a randomized trial, right? So have we ever done a randomized trial to take, thousands of people and put them on a treadmill and thousands of people and said, just go walk around wherever you want and looked at the differences? As far as I know, that study's never been done. So we can't definitively say what's better or not, but there's just such a strong body of observational data that any walking is associated not just with decreased mortality, but better sleeping, lower blood pressure for people who suffer or who experience hypertension, possibly better blood sugars for people who tend towards diabetes, better mental health and functioning. So my personal belief, and this has actually been substantiated in a lot in the behavioral science literature. I'm a physician, but I work really closely with behavioral scientists. It's one thing to say, go walk as a physician, but it's another thing to actually change your life to make exercise, or in this case, walking, a part of your life. And one thing that is very true is people need to do what works for them. Some people love going to the gym. I actually, before the pandemic, I love running on a treadmill there. It's a whole community of people at the gym, and I'd say hi to them all. Most of them I only knew their first name, but it was a really important part of my life every morning going to the gym. Now I spend more of my time running outside. Some people are really motivated to walk by a friend. And if they don't know that a friend is going to count on them to be on the corner at 6 a.m. 3 days a week, they're not going to get out of bed, and they're just going to press the snooze button. So other people, I really enjoy, for them, exercise is their personal time, alone time. They don't want to be chatting with a friend. So there's no one way when it comes to walking. It's really up to the individual to figure out what works for that individual.
Well, that is great to hear. And like you said, it's very accessible that way too. You can get out and go and then do it for whatever way works for you. Will you tell us a little bit more about the work that you've done and the research you've done with people and walking? What have you expected of them, and what have you learned from them?
Yeah, so I was as you know, I'm a geriatrician, very interested in this phenomenon of older adults who feel, and especially in the Latino community here in Los Angeles, that people feel that sometimes it's almost unbecoming to be physically active when you age. And there's a whole group of Latino seniors who obviously this is a complete generalization, does not apply to everybody, but it is a well-described cultural phenomenon that you kind of earn the right to sit on the couch. And so when people would say, well, why don't you exercise? They will say, because I'm old. And so did some observational data, and we found that people who attribute being sedentary to old age are less likely to exercise. And if you actually can teach people that actually being physically active is a normal part of aging. Being old does not mean, or being older, as we like to say, does not mean that you have to sit on the couch. In fact, now more and more, we have such great role models of older adults who make physical activity such an important part of their life. So I had the great opportunity to work with a behavioral motivational psychologist here, and we designed an intervention to teach older adults that being sedentary is not a normal part of aging. And we did a randomized trial supported partway by AFAR. This was my Beeson Award a long time ago. And we found that actually teaching older adults that being sedentary is not a normal part of aging, when you package that with an actual physical activity class, people were much more likely to increase their physical activity. So it's fun to see a lot of the science out there now showing physically active older adults kind of in popular culture on television now. I think we're less likely to see the stereotype of the grandma that sits on the couch and never does anything. But there's still room to go, don't get me wrong, but it's something I care very much about.
Right. Well, tell me about when you were the educational part of this. How did people react? Were they excited to try? Was there resistance? And how do you get past that?
Yeah, no, people were really excited about it. We worked in 28 different senior centers around Los Angeles, and we created a fotonovela. And I'm pleased to say at a lot of the senior centers, the project is still going on. The participants are continuing it on their own. So yeah, people really enjoyed it, and they weren't offended by the idea. We started out doing focus groups and asking people. We just asked people, what are some of the good things about growing old? There's so much negative imaging of aging. I know AFAR has been a big leader in prevention. You guys do a lot as well as at Prevention Magazine to try to get around that stereotype of the elderly person that's a drag on society. And people were really excited. There's all sorts of great people were talking about, oh, you get discounts at movies, and you don't have to worry about getting pregnant, and a lot of really the good things about getting older.
That's really great. I love it. Yeah. At prevention, we often find that our readers, if you ask them, how young do you feel? It's often a little bit younger maybe than their, actual age. And I think it has a lot to do with the activity level. It gives you that feeling of, that you can still do whatever you want.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point.
What I was wondering also, why you talk about walking with this group, or do you also help them find other kinds of exercises? Is walking the main thing they were doing with the intervention group, or?
Yeah, in the projects we did do walking, because as you mentioned, not everyone can walk, but it's very accessible to most adults. And I was working mostly with people over age 65, but even now for people in their middle age, most people can walk. It's so accessible. It's not expensive. You need a good pair of shoes, some comfortable clothes. And it's just less of a hassle. It's very, this isn't just my research. There's a ton of data from NIH, NIA that has shown that walking is very accessible. And people like it. People enjoy walking. It's just a natural. And there's a lot of scientific evidence out there that you can refer patients to or clinicians to. If you just go to the NIA website, there's whole pamphlets on how to start a walking program. So, that being said, I think, it's important to point out that people it's not all about decreasing mortality. To decrease fall risk, people really should be doing some cardio, whether that's walking or some other biking or swimming, strength training. So you can go to the American College of Sports Medicine, where they describe the 8 different parts of your body that twice a week we should all be, meaning those of us 50 and above, probably doesn't apply to you, but all of us who are 50 and above should be doing these strength exercises, about 8 to 15 reps twice a week. That's the hardest part for me. Personally, I find them really boring, but I think it's really important. And then balance training. There's a huge body of science I haven't personally done myself, but I'm very aware of, that to prevent falls, they're really simple exercises, 10 to 15 minutes, 3 times a week. Again, very accessible on the NIH website about how to improve balance to decrease your risk of falling, which, as we know, falling down and breaking hip is something we really want to avoid.
Right. You know, it sounds like doing those things, the strength training and those other things, um, you can boost your, you know, ability and confidence for then the walking too, right? So you can go farther or longer or just enjoy it more if you've done the strength training.
That's a great point. You know, strengthening your core decreases your risk of falling, right? And it improves your strength and it improves your metabolism. So, you know,
What else does walking do for your physical health? Can we talk a little bit more about the benefits?
well, we know that weight bearing exercises are associated with improved bone mineral density, right? So there's this tons of epidemiologic data, even just walking a mile a day or, 7 miles a week in women is strongly associated with better bone mineral density, which is associated with decreased risk of hip fracture. Again, back to something that we all very much hope to avoid. So that's good. It's also associated with, again, I want to differentiate between the gold standard randomized trial and observational data, but we know that people who walk have better self-reported quality of life, not only in physical functioning, but also in mental health, and can decrease anxiety and help people sleep better as well.
That's a lot. That's
Yeah.
really, yeah. What about mental health?
Yeah, again, as I was saying that, I just wanted to make the caveat that, depression and anxiety are very serious medical illnesses. And I don't want to give the message that just start walking and you're going to cure your depression. That's a different issue. So people who are experiencing depression and anxiety, please do go talk to a professional and consider psychotherapy, possibly pharmacotherapy. But people who walk, there's a long history of changes in your brain that occur when we exercise, and that improves mood and is associated with better lower rates of depressive symptoms and lower rates of anxiety, and as I mentioned, better sleeping. So all good things.
Do you know if those effects are the same whether you're walking again on a treadmill or outside? Because I've heard some, amazing research about nature and being in it and even seeing it, but just it's better, like you said, probably to walk than not. So
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think that really gets back to the individual. I mean, I think there have been, some really beautiful essays that people have written, some of which have been picked up in the lay press about the mindfulness experience of walking through the woods, right? And, some of these, goes back, it's not new, like Thoreau, right? And the beauty of nature and experiencing nature and thoughtfulness. And so if that is what you want, yeah, walk outside. On the other hand, I don't, the science is there that walking on a treadmill is really good for you. And a lot of people like to listen to podcasts or listen to books on audio books, which is something I really enjoy when I'm doing a walk, and something I feel like I don't like to do when I'm on a run. And I also wanted to be sure, I had on my list of things to make sure that we cover today, because I feel like we don't do a good enough job of talking about this, and that's safety. So if you're on a treadmill at a gym, you don't have to worry about being assaulted. I've actually been physically assaulted twice while exercising outside, once while running, once while walking, and thankfully got away both times. But, I'm 5'10" and I'm really strong, and I still was assaulted. And these were in really fancy neighborhoods. And I think we really, and I do try to talk about this with my patients, we need to be really mindful of safety. And this, again, not a randomized trial to prove that you shouldn't walk outside with earbuds in, but I don't recommend for any of my senior patients that they walk outside with earbuds in. I just think it makes you too vulnerable. On the other hand, on a treadmill, feel free.
Right. Well, thanks for sharing about that. That's a really good reminder, that something that we should all really be aware of. And I think, yeah, the earbuds really do change things outside, your awareness of yourself and where you are. So
yeah. Oh, and not to interrupt, I think every woman should take a self-defense class also.
Great advice. Everyone should sign up for one. Let's talk about, so some of your work has been people who are older, often over 80. Am I right that you've worked with people?
Yeah, my Beeson project was over 80. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So tell us both why it was important to study that group, but also what do you think younger people, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s can learn from that?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're both important, right? So on the one hand, if you're in your 80s, it's not too late to get the benefits from walking, right? I mean, I have a lot of patients who were sedentary throughout their life. I mean, I think part of that is, if you think of women just a little younger than I am, had the benefit of Title IX, and some of them got to have athletic scholarships. And it was much more normal for women to be athletes and to be exercising. But a lot of my patients who are in their 80s, that was not, they weren't maybe allowed to go play soccer with the guys on the street, or even, it wasn't that long ago that I had a lot of patients in the greatest generation, right? So they, were going off to the war. They didn't have time to do sports. So it's been a lot of people discover exercise in a new way in their 80s. And just because you didn't have the luxury or the opportunity or the interest to do it when you're younger, it's not too late.
Mhm.
That being said, for all the people out there who are still in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, you get more, the earlier you start, the better the benefit. I mean, there's really strong data that behaviors in midlife translate to better health in older age.
Great, great.
Yeah.
Has I, can you talk about the effects of walking or this kind of physical activity on stroke risk? Is that something you've studied, I think?
Oh yeah. Yeah, we did. So physical activity is known to decrease stroke risk, lower blood pressure, which is one of the major risks for stroke, of course. And so we did an intervention where we adapted that previous intervention that I mentioned about teaching older adults not to attribute being sedentary to old age. And we paired it with a stroke prevention program in senior centers. And we didn't have a large enough sample to look at decreasing stroke, but we did find lower blood pressure and better rates of walking in the groups that were randomized to having the walking intervention. And we paired it. We had the great opportunity to work with the American Heart Association and the American Stroke Association. So we had our biggest outcome was knowledge about stroke. So as I'm sure you know, and probably a lot of people on the webinar know, but maybe not everybody, we really miss stroke a lot. So kind of people have symptoms of stroke. We're not as good as we really should be as getting people to the emergency room as quickly as we can. So kind of like a long time ago, we were really slow. We would miss a lot of heart attacks. And I feel a lot public health has done a great job of helping us be aware of when someone has chest tightness, call 911. We're less good at picking up symptoms of a stroke and getting people to the emergency room. So we were able to increase the education for stroke. And it was paired with a walking intervention.
I see. That's great. That's great.
Yeah.
Pull it all together, all the benefits there, I'd love to hear more about the reasoning and the what went into working with the particular community, the Latin community that you worked with. Was there a reason you picked that group? Was it, tell me about why that was an important way to go.
That's a great question. It was so long ago and really early in my career, but I think I just recently moved to Los Angeles, and Los Angeles has one of the largest Latino populations. We have almost 11 million people in LA County now. And I reached out to the general manager of the City of Los Angeles Area Agency on Aging. Her name is Laura Trejo. And she now, actually, we've had some really exciting things going on in Los Angeles. Now we are LA County Area Agency on Aging and our LA City Area Agencies on Aging have joined to have one department level agency on aging that Laura Trejo is leading. So it was really through partnering with her and asking her about the needs of the aging community in greater Los Angeles. And she felt that there was a big untapped need among older Latinos here. And so partnering with her was really what started that. I mean, I kind of have a lifelong interest in Latino culture. I was an exchange student in Argentina when I was in high school and speak the language, and did community sanitation work in South America in college. And so it's a community that I'm very comfortable with and enjoy working with. And so it was a natural. But then when Laura Trejo said that this was such an untapped need for physical activity interventions in the senior center, it was a natural fit.
So interesting. How do you think a person's community affects, their physical activity and a walking routine? Is that an important part of it? We spoke earlier about how some people love to have a partner in walking and some people don't, but that broader sense too, that.
Yeah, that's a great question. And yeah, some of my colleagues here at UCLA have done really good work. Arlene Brown here, who's my colleague in the Division of General Internal Medicine here, and also had a Beeson Award, she really did some groundbreaking work early on the role of neighborhood. And, a lot of people have looked at the negative parts of your neighborhood. Like if you live in a neighborhood with high crime and really bad cracks in the sidewalk, you're going to be less likely to be physically active. But there's also a lot of really powerful data about the resilience of your neighborhood and the power of your community that can be tapped into to improve physical activity. And then another colleague here, Kenrick Duru, I had the opportunity to work with him on a physical activity intervention, and he worked through churches in the greater Los Angeles area, mostly mostly serving African American seniors. And it was called Sisters in Motion. And they really tapped into this idea of community, and even to the point of having competitions among different groups at the church to see who could have the greatest number of steps. And it was very friendly competition, but it was really a successful way to improve physical activity in that community.
Oh, that's really great. Earlier you told us that powerful information about going from very little or no movement to, 4,000 steps. And so that's fascinating. What would you say though to somebody who maybe has always been active runner, athlete, and who might see walking as slowing down, or it's a sign of, sees it as a negative sign of aging? Like
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. And I think that, I think one of the things that I care so much about is I don't think aging should be all about comparing to where we were when we were 25, right? For some people, like I will say for me, like I wasn't a competitive runner when I was really young. So I'm still like getting best times in my 50s, but that's because I never did competitive running before. But I know, like, for example, my husband, who ran like a 3:10 marathon in his 20s, and but that was like 15 pounds ago. A lot of people do have a hard time adjusting down, but I think that I would think of, you're probably very familiar with the BALTs. I know a lot of people in the gerontology community are very familiar with the BALTs, selective optimization, I think, and compensation model, but I'm probably not paraphrasing this exactly right. But the idea is that we adjust our expectations as we get older, and that's healthy and good, right? There's nothing wrong with the person that, maybe they played singles tennis when they were younger and now they play doubles tennis, but you can still get a huge physical fitness benefit. So, someday I will not be able to run, but walking is great. And other people may never even want to run. Walking, you can get such a health benefit from walking. So I think that I'm against being a snob against walking. I think we should be super inclusive. Walking is wonderful. It's really fun. I love it. And my patients love it. My family loves it. But I will say that I wanted to say too, when you're talking about the diversity of the group here, because I do think that, like I mentioned, you're really going to get the most the people who are going from 0 to something, hopefully 4,000 steps. But the people on the call here who are already, exercising, walking an hour a day, there is some really interesting data that it's been kind of hyped up the last couple of years. I'm sure you're familiar with it, about this high intensity training. And can you get a benefit from doing short bursts of really intensive training. And the data is really compelling. Not that you're going to get more of a mortality benefit, but it looks pretty convincing that you will have other health benefits like VO2 max, be in better shape with some high intensity training. So I recommend to my patients, and I will throw it out to the people here, that there was this really interesting study published in JAMA published in a different physiologic journal, but it was cited in JAMA, Journal of Applied Physiology, last year from Japan. And it was a randomized trial, so high level of evidence. And they randomized middle-aged and older adults to doing 30 minutes of walking a day. And one group was told to walk 30 minutes at a comfortable to brisk pace. And the other group was told to do 3 minutes of really hard walking, alternating with 3 minutes of strolling, and do that for the full 30 minutes. And the results were really impressive. The people who were doing the intense training, 3 minutes on, 3 minutes off, scored substantially better on markers of physical health, like VO2 max and endurance. So again, not mortality. I'm not saying you're going to live longer if you do that, but it is better conditioning. And I think this is going to be a hot area of research moving forward. Like, are there biomarkers that do better? What's the glycemic index of the people who do high intensity training? So for people who can do that and are motivated to do that, I think there's pretty compelling data that that's worth trying.
That's so interesting, because I think often when we hear about these HIIT workouts, it seems like a really hardcore, jumping around a lot or something like that. So to think of it in the context of walking faster or slower is really empowering, I think.
No, I'm glad you like it. Again, I don't think it would be a HIIT internet. It would be more an
Right.
IT, right? So it's not high intensity training, it's intensity training. Yeah, it's not like those, crazy high intensity training.
No, but it's an interval type training.
It's still a type of interval. That's exactly right. Yeah.
Oh, it's really great. We're getting a lot of really great questions coming in, Catherine, but before
I haven't been reading them. Should I be reading them or just relying them on you?
You can, but I will read,
Okay.
I will post some of them to you. But before we even get to them, just if somebody, I think maybe we have our answer in the intervals, but if we're inspired to walk tomorrow, what would you recommend somebody do to make that worthwhile?
Yeah, so start low, go slow, just like we say when you're starting a new blood pressure medication. If you haven't been walking, don't go out and do the interval training that I just mentioned.
Okay.
Yeah. Start low, go slow. If, the other thing, we had talked about this before, I think in our pre-meeting, a lot of people say, do I need to go see a doctor before I start a walking regimen? And I would say, if you have heart disease, absolutely talk to your doctor. If you get any sort of chest pain or substantial shortness of breath when you're exercising, absolutely go see your doctor. Otherwise, if you start low, go slow, you really don't need to go have a complete physical or have a treadmill test or anything like that. In fact, what we in the physical activity scientific community, we like to say that the risks of being sedentary are so bad that you should actually need a doctor's note to not exercise, as opposed to need a doctor's note to exercise. Okay. So that, and then, start low, go slow. And then for those of you who are already past the slow and you're walking for, you're getting your 3 miles, 7,000 steps a day, I would go to the interval training for sure.
Great. I'm going to do that tomorrow.
Yeah. You're in New York. You're in the perfect walking city. It's so great.
I could do my interval to catch the train.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to turn to some of these questions, and audience, please feel free to type in more as we go. We'll try to get to as many of them as we can. But somebody's hoping that you could expand on brain changes related to walking. Do you have more information on what's happening there? Are those changes sustainable?
Yeah, great question. So big area of research for a long time, right? The relationship between physical activity and brain health. So we know from observational data, people who exercise more have better brain health. People who exercise in midlife are less likely to get dementia. That's observational data, not randomized trial. As far as I understand, we do not have absolutely convincing evidence from randomized trials that exercising prevents dementia. But there's so much powerful observational data that exercising is strongly associated with better brain function on in-depth tests of cognitive function, that I think it's probably just a matter of time that we show that there's actually, that there's a causal pathway. So we know that, exercise lowers blood pressure, and we know that having elevated blood pressure is a risk for not just massive stroke, but microvascular disease, right? The little small, they're not even mini strokes, but if you get an MRI and you see a lot of little white spots, that can be little blood vessels that that don't work anymore, enlarged, and that can be associated with high blood pressure. So there's a lot of empiric data to show exercise makes sense to improve brain function. But can I say 100% the randomized trial proves it? No, but it makes sense.
Right, makes sense. You did talk about start low, start slow and everything, but we do have someone wondering about, do we have to elevate our heart rate for this to sort of be considered cardio or to get the benefits?
No, I mean, in fact, that sort of landmark study that was published in JAMA last year by Paluch, Paluch, and her team, they actually looked at the intensity or the speed of the walking and the relationship with mortality, and there was no benefit. Again, this is observational data, but the people who walked leisurely at 3 miles per hour, an hour to get your 7,000 steps, had exact same amount of mortality benefit as the people who were walking briskly and going the same distance in less time. So now there may be other physical benefits to getting your heart rate up, like conditioning and possibly some of the biomarkers, but it's definitely in terms of mortality, the data is not there that you need to get your heart rate up real quick, real fast.
Interesting. Fascinating.
Yeah.
What about if somebody has issues with balance and needs a walking aid? Do you have any insight or opinions on poles, canes, walking sticks?
Yeah, this is such a great point. So I just saw Nancy Lundeberg from American Geriatric Society had a beautiful tweet on Twitter this morning that I saw about, it was a senior who was out in the park with her walker. And, the walking aids can be very liberating to older adults, but there's actually kind of an interesting data. Sometimes walkers can actually contribute to falls if they're not used correctly. So I strongly, I'm not a physical therapist, but as a geriatrician, we work very collaborative with our physical therapy professional colleagues. And I always make sure before I just prescribe a walker or a cane that my patients are seen by a professional physical therapist who can assess them and teach them how to use it correctly. Because like I mentioned, if you don't use a walker correctly, it can really increase your risk of falling. And canes, sometimes canes, because you think about you're asymmetric if you're using a cane, so that can contribute to falls. So very important to get input from professional physical therapists for walking aids. But in general, yeah, absolutely. They can really help get people out and increase the amount of the world that they can participate in.
Right. I see a lot of with like double poles, and that seems to help with that.
More symmetry than just a cane.
Yeah. Yeah. How about shoes? Do you have insight into shoes? I know prevention on our site, prevention.com, we've got a lot of articles about shoes, but I wonder if there's any tips you have.
Yeah, so you'd mentioned this before, and so I just always tell them, like, be sure you wear really comfortable shoes. But there's, as you know, and you guys probably know more about this from prevention, there's this whole movement to have minimalist shoes, right? To kind of replicate being barefoot. And so I went back and I dug into that literature a little bit. It's really interesting. In terms of mortality, no randomized trial has shown that one type of shoe is going to help your long-term health benefits in terms of mortality better than others. And I wouldn't expect it does. But there is some really interesting data that having those minimalist shoes, randomized trials are associated with better biomechanics of walking. So that's like if you're in a walking lab and they measure your stride length and your symmetry and your gait speed and your efficiency of walking. So it is interesting to think that if you are wearing those minimalist shoes, you might have a more efficient gait that could decrease your chance of falling. Now, I haven't seen any data to show that they actually decrease your risk of falling or decrease injury. So I would put this in the category of personalized. Wear the shoes that you like, talk to, and there is good evidence. You need to have good arch support. So I think going either working with a podiatrist or going to one of those walking stores where they have, they can really assess your foot and find out what your arch support needs are, and having a shoe that supports that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and I've also heard that walking shoes can help to have I think a wider toe base because of the way that your foot is striking the ground. But again, I think you want to talk to somebody who's like an expert in
Yeah.
shoes. It's really great when they can, watch you walk or run and then tell you, this is the kind of shoe that's really going to give you the support you need.
Yeah, great point. Yeah, and to add your point, people who have weight problems or obesity, I think that there's some good data that having a really good base on the shoe can also help prevent injury.
Mm-hmm.
And high heels are bad. That we know. Yeah.
Yes, we do. Yes. Don't wear them.
Yeah.
I've finally mostly given them up.
Yeah.
Do we know of any specific relationship between walking and immune health?
That's interesting. So when we become physically active, of course, we activate, molecular systems in our body, and there have been some associations with improved markers of immunity. I feel like I'm getting a little bit out of my area of expertise, so I don't want to say too much. But I think there are associations between improvements in biomarkers, including like IL-6 and TNF alpha, that improve when people are physically active. So,
all right, that's great. That's good. How about people who are dealing with, other health issues? We've had a question about someone who has heart disease, and someone who has back pain. Like, is walking going to help here? Is walking something they should be wary of?
Yeah, so great question. Walking is great for heart disease. It's great for osteoarthritis, was the #1 contributor to back pain. So, and it seems counterintuitive that if you have pain from arthritis, that walking would help. But actually, there's a huge, body of work done by like Kate Lorig at Stanford from decades ago, that walking, especially when it's part of a self-care management program, can really decrease pain and improve quality of life. So, it needs to, depending if it's brand new back pain and you're worried about spinal cord compression, please go see your doctor before you just start a walking program. But if it's chronic musculoskeletal back pain, walking should be able to help over the long term improve pain. And same with heart disease, right? So you can lower your blood pressure. A lot of people post heart attack, post myocardial infarction, are put on very aggressive physical activity interventions. And then, well, I guess a great example would be the Diabetes Care and Prevention Program, DCCP, right? For treating diabetes without medication. And an aggressive physical activity should be the first line for diabetes treatment.
That's a good reminder about diabetes, how powerful walking can be, to help people manage that or even reverse prediabetes, right?
Absolutely.
Is there anything to know specifically about bone density and walking? We've had a couple questions early on about that.
Yeah, it's interesting. So strong observational data, I think I mentioned this earlier. So a mile a day, 7 miles a week, better bone density. And I think, I'm not a basic scientist, but my understanding is that the muscular contractions that we experience when we walk activate the osteoclasts in the bone. And these are these bone cells that build bone. And they don't just build any bone, but they build strong bone, the better bone that's less likely to break. So that's the thought of why you don't get the same bone mineral density benefit from swimming, for example, that's not a weight-bearing exercise. And there's some really interesting studies showing that after people have a fracture, walking, the weight-bearing experience of walking can accelerate bone healing. From the same idea, the idea is the muscular contractions that activate the osteoclasts.
Fascinating.
Yeah, it's interesting.
As well as preventative care.
I'm sure AFAR has funded a lot of that important basic science work.
That's really great. Well, we're about wrapping up our questions. So, Catherine, is there any last pieces of advice or, you know, benefits that we didn't touch on today that you want to share?
No, I think I got to it all. I did want to give a little shout out about my amazing mom who, I guess to back to your arthritis question, this would be an example of, you're always wary of N of one, but I think her experience is is not rare among older adults. So my mom probably would have been a star athlete if she was growing up now when women's sports are supported better. And she had a car accident in her 30s. And so one leg was shorter than the other. So she had accelerated osteoarthritis, very, very painful. And she has a normal healthy weight, but she had so much pain. She ended up being on Vicodin for a while. And then she has been so good about going to the gym. She does strength training. She walks 3 miles almost every single day. And she hasn't taken a pain pill for years now. And so walking has been, and she's turning 80 this September. Happy birthday, Mom. So anyway, I just wanted to give a little shout out to my mom because I think she's really an example of successful aging. She still has arthritis and some other medical conditions, but she's living a really vigorous life.
That is very inspiring. I love hearing that.
Thanks.
Thank you for sharing about her. And thank you for sharing all of your expertise, Catherine. This has been really fascinating. It's amazing to me how much great research and observational and other there is about walking, because you can do it without thinking much, or you can do it with real purpose and intention. It can really change your life.
Thank you, Sarah. Well, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you for your leadership with prevention. You have such a reach to so many people, and it's really cool that you're so responsible about the way you present science and data, and not everything we do has to be proven by a randomized controlled trial to show that it works, right? But it's good to know what has, and then what it makes, even though there's not a randomized controlled trial, there's still things that we do that makes sense. So I really appreciate your leadership, and also of course thank AFAR and John and for your support of all the work that you've done in the area of physical activity and successful aging over the years.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Catherine. I think we have a little quick slide to show about what's coming next. The first thing that's coming is this Saturday is Prevention's virtual walk. We do this twice a year. It's a free event, but we love when you sign up because we can, send you congratulations things for doing it, and you can be part of our Facebook community and share your pictures. It's just a really wonderful community and a way to, do something for yourself. Do a 5K on Saturday and be proud. Oh, the other thing about our 5K is you can do it anywhere you want, of course, because it's virtual, and with anyone you want. You also don't actually have to do full 5K if you don't want to, because we're not checking. We're just trying to remind people and encourage people to get out there and walk, for their own, health and wellness. And then coming up next month, we'll be having another webinar on keeping your brain young, another favorite topic of prevention and of course AFAR. So I hope everyone will join us at that as well. So thank you everyone for being here today. AFAR does amazing work, as Catherine said, building up the science out there that is helping us all. So show them your support, and please join us again next month. And I hope everyone has a great rest of your day.